Originally, I was going to just make one massive video, but seeing as how YouTube hates my guts, and they definitely hate when anyone talks about Evangelion or shows any clips from it, I'll have to be really careful and just split it up into many parts. Now, what I want to do with this video is, I want to basically just compare the Rebuild movies to the old series, and see which one's objectively better. This is mostly going to be opinion based, so take it with a grain of salt. For this video, I mostly just want to cover the story between the original series and the Rebuild movies. Obviously, I know that the Rebuild movies aren't complete yet, but I can still cover it without mentioning the quality of the endings. Maybe that'll come whenever the final Rebuild movie comes out, like 10 fucking years from now. I'll do characters in a later video, but for now, let's just cover the overall story. First off, let's talk about story progression. Okay, so I'm going to give an example. Now, let's say you have just a generic TV show. Now, at the beginning of the TV show, everything's fairly positive, pretty normal. The characters get introduced, their main goals are mentioned, yada yada yada. Halfway through, however, something really bad happens, like something really negative. Like, let's say, I don't know, maybe the main character gets killed, or the main bad guy shows up and does some really bad things or something, and all the characters are left at their lowest point, or how I would like to call the all is lost moment. The only place to go now is up. So after that, something positive would probably end up happening. The characters are happy again, or happier, and they're able to use this to, I don't know, maybe gain a new power, something stupid and generic like that. And they beat the main bad guy, and they're all happy again. It's all positive again. It's basically like a lines that go up, then down, really far down, and then they just go back up. Evangelion isn't like that. Shinji is a pretty depressing main character, and even when Rei gets introduced, it doesn't really help make anything more positive. I mean, there's a few happy moments sprinkled in, but they're few and far between. Now, when Asuka gets introduced, that's when the show kind of gets a little bit more positive. In fact, it reaches its highest point of positivity, and we're not even halfway through the fucking show. But there is still quite a bit of comedy sprinkled in on some of these middle episodes. But it's all downhill from here, because after a certain part, that's when you start to notice that things are starting to get a little bit more depressing. And then we get some pretty horrifying shit. After that, we're just on a downward spiral. And the end of Evangelion movie is a fucking roller coaster ride that's pretty much just as crazy as everything else. Now, roller coaster ride's probably the best way to describe this show. In fact, I think it's the perfect way to describe it, because you start out kind of down, you pick up, and then you go up, 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 and then once you get to the very top, that's when everything starts to go back down really fucking fast. And you just keep going down until you reach the end where it evens out, and it's actually kind of nice. That's weird, but the Rebuild movies follow this exact same goddamn pattern, where it starts out kind of slow and a little bit depressing, then it goes up and it peaks, and then it's all downhill from there. And I don't know how the last movie's going to be, but I imagine it's probably going to even out, or at least I fucking hope. There's a scene from the first movie and a scene from the second movie that mirror each other, and in the first movie, it shows how depressing and alone Shinji is. And then in the second one, it's the exact same scene, but Shinji's actually happy and he has friends. And that's what I'm talking about. That's a fucking roller coaster ride. And it's where it peaks in the second movie, where you see Shinji's all happy, he has friends, and you know that it's only a matter of time until something bad happens. And of course, something bad fucking happens. And that's when it's all downhill. But at the end of the movie, that's when you start to think, wait, maybe something good's gonna happen this time. And you start to think that, well, maybe Shinji's gonna change the world and he's gonna save Rei, and it'll end happily. Well, I actually think the exact opposite of that, because that's what fucking happens. So what happens is the world gets fucked. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. The world just gets fucked at the end of the movie. And the third movie is just one big ball of confusion. I mean, I love the movie, but that's what it is. It follows Shinji around, and he's just as confused as the audience, which is actually a really nice perspective, because we know that we're following the protagonist, and he doesn't know what the fuck's going on either. So we feel comfort in the fact that we're not alone in being fucking confused. Now, Shinji's pretty much out of friends in this movie. I mean, there's only like one character he can actually trust, because everybody else either hates him or is gone, and Rei isn't even the same Rei anymore, so he can't trust anybody but Kaoru. And it's the first time that he's actually legitimately introduced in the movies, and he's dead. And this, of course, leaves Shinji at maximum levels of depression, kind of like what he was at the end of episode 24 in the original series. So God knows what's going to happen in the last movie. It is weird how similar the two story structures of the original and the Rebuild movies are. Like, they're pretty much the same while being completely different at the same fucking time, if that makes any sense at all. Now, personally, I prefer the original series, but I think the Rebuild series is far easier to get into. Like, if you're completely new to Evangelion, I think it's way easier to start with the Rebuild series than it is to try and watch the original anime. I mean, when I first got into Evangelion, I watched the Rebuild movies. I ended up loving them, and I decided, hey, I gotta watch this original series. I have a few friends who like the Rebuild series more. I have a friend that likes the original more. But they all started out watching the Rebuild series before the original anime. So, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say it's a tie. You can say that's a cop-out if you want, but I think both have a good enough story that I can't determine which I like more. So as far as the story goes, it's a tie. At least in my opinion. Next time I'll be covering individual characters. They'll all get their own separate videos.